Good evening. Today we are learning Maseches Bava Daf Yud Aleph, and we're starting on the very last of the short lines on Daf Yud Amud Beis at the two dots. We had said in our Mishnah that Chavti b'Tashlume Nizko, that when a person is obligated, they have to pay the tashlum of the nezek. And the Gemara makes a fascinating, gentle distinction, a diuk, I should say. Chavti b'nizko loktani. It doesn't say I'm chayev to pay him. It says ella. I have to pay for the tashlum, for the hashlama of that which I damaged. What's the difference? If I break your car, I don't have to buy you a new car. I have to pay for the difference in cost. You'll keep your car. You have a $250 deductible. I'll write you a check for $250. That's your pechas. That's what you lost. And that's what the Gemara says is the diuk. And that's halacha l'maisa. We find this in the Sfarim and Choshen Mishpat. If I damage your car, we look at the cost before, we look at the cost after, we do some math, and the subtracted number is what I owe you in the zik, and that's based on this diuk right here. And says the Gemara on the first of the
difference in value or the difference in cost?
The difference in what it's worth right now.
Okay, wow. Yeah.
So it's what it's worth right now. And the Gemara says, Taninu lahad tadnu rabbanan. There's no need for you to repeat it. We already had a brisa, because the brisa writes, and this brisa can be found in a Tosefta over here. We haven't seen it, but if you flip to the back where we have the Toseftas, you'll see this. Tashlume nezek, melamed shabaylam metaplin benevela. That if I kill your animal, you, the bailam, keep the animal because that animal has value, and I only have to pay the gap between your dead animal and the value of your animal before it died. So let's say that a cow is worth $1,000. Dead, it's worth $500. You can sell the skin, you can sell the meat to goyim, whatever the case may be. So then I owe you $500. Minani Mili, where do we know this from? The Gemara is going to provide three answers, and then it's going to play a lengthy tzrichusa to figure out why we need all three answers. Answer number one, 2/3 of the way down, as to how we know that when we cause damage, we're only responsible for the tashlum, for the balance, the difference, but not for the whole cost. Amar Rav Ami do Amar Kra, Maken nefesh behema yishalmena. Al tikri yishalmena. Don't say he should pay. Ela yashlimena. He should fill in. He should complete. He should supplement, but only for that which is missing, not all of it. If I ding your car, I don't have to buy you a new car. And if I kill your animal, I don't have to buy you a new animal. I only have to buy for you the difference in cost between your animal alive and your animal dead. And this is what the pasuk means, is that makib nefesh behema yishalmena, it's really yashlemena. That's answer number one. Rav Kahana Amar Mehacha. Rav Kahana says we have a second Mari Makom that teaches us this idea. Im taruf yitaref yiviehu aid hatrefa lo yishalem. And if the animal gets mauled and killed, and there are edim, hatrefa lo yishalem, you don't have to pay the trefa, meaning that the bailam keep the trefa. The animal itself, they keep. Whatever its value is, it is. Today, when an animal is slaughtered, every piece of that animal is utilized, sold to the market for different things. You'll find that the bones are going to be wanted by researchers. The skins are going to be wanted by leather makers. The back of the animal, which we often don't eat because of nikur hagid ve'cheleb, will be sold to the goyim. The front half of the animal is going to the yidden. The only thing that we really don't keep is the blood. Everything else gets sold. Everything else gets sold. So here, by Rav Kahana, there's a unique drasha where we reread one of the words. The pasuk reads Yiviehu aid, and the pasuk says it's not aid, it's ad trefa yishalim. Trefa atzma lo yishalim. I don't have to pay him for the trefa for the dead animal. He's keeping that. I only pay him the balance. And that's answer number two. So answer number one was maka nefesh behema, that if I kill an animal. Answer number two is if an animal gets killed by being mauled by another animal. And here's answer number three, 5 lines into the wide lines. Chizkiya Amar Mehacha. Chizkiya says the source for this idea that I only pay the difference between the value of your animal, dead and alive, is the following pasuk, Va'amesi yelo, that the animal, the dead animal, will be to you. Lenizak, that the animal goes to the person who was damaged. And the Brisa says on this, wait 1 second. You're saying you're defining the pronoun of lo to him. You're defining that as that the animal, the carcass, should go to the nizak. Perhaps we should say that it goes to the mazik. So says the Gemara, Amris lo kachayev, that you would not even say that, says the Gemara. And we don't know the words we don't lo kachaya. So says the Gemara, my lo kachaya. What does this mean? Amar Abaye. Isal kadaitach, if it would have been that nevela de mazik havya, that really the carcass goes to the mazik and he keeps it. So then lichtov rachmana shor tachas shor velishtok. The Torah should have just said that we replace one shor with another, and then there's no reason to say anything else. We therefore see from here that when the animal is killed, that the nizak keeps the animal, and then the nizak keeps the animal, and that has a value of, let's say, 50% of the full cow. And my job as the mazik is to pay the balance of the extra 50%. Now we've had three answers. Now there's three ways to look at this, two ways to look at this. Either there's a machlokas between each answer, or each answer teaches me another layer of truth. And here the Gemara says, about 12 lines or so from the bottom, Vitzricha. We need all three answers. We need the case of Ma'ke Nefesh Behema Yeshalmena. We need the pasuk of Im Tarofi Tarefi V'Yehu Eira Trefa Lo Yeshalem. And we need the pasuk of V'Hamesi alone. The Gemara is going to go through the reasons as to why. If I would have only had the first case where I killed your animal, I, a human, killed your animal, that's mishum de lo shchicha. It's uncommon for a man to get so angry that he kills a cow, that other than shchita. That's not normal. Aval treifa de shchicha, but when one animal gets mauled by another, which is the circle of life, that's how animals get killed in the jungle. So then, a malo, I might have thought the rules would be different. Sricha, therefore, I needed that case. I needed that pasuk of im tarofi tarefi ve'u eid hatreifa lo yishalim and v'yashmin and treifa. If I only had the second case, the second pasuk, which was the answer of Rav Kahana, that's mishum de memela, because it happens kind of on its own. There's no human intervention. Aval make behema de biadai memalo. But maybe the first case where we talk about a man, a human being who kills an animal, emalo, perhaps the rules would be different. Therefore, we need bucket number one. We need answer number one of Rav Ami, which is the pasuk of Ma'ke Nefesh Behema Yeshalmena. V'yashmin and Hani Tarte. If I had answers 1 and 2, but not the pasuk of V'Hamesi alo, Hamishum de lo shchicha v'hamishum de memela, each of them have a uniqueness, which is that in the first case of the pasuk that says Ma'ke ish nefesh yeshalmena, that case is lo shchicha, and the case of an animal getting mauled of tarofi taref, that's mishum de memela. That happens, circle of life, just the way the world is. Aval, the case V'Hamesi alo de shchicha uviyadayim, that case where one animal kills another is common, and there is a certain degree of responsibility and control from the owner. Therefore, I would have thought things were different. So you cannot learn from the first two to exclude the third. Therefore, all three psukim are needed. And 5-6 lines from the bottom, the Gemara says, what if we only had the last pasuk? By the case of Amesi Yelo, that's because my property killed someone. But in the other case, that I, the human, did it, perhaps I would have said that that's not true, therefore it's tzricha. Lamaisa, the Gemara needs all three answers. But one thing that we've learned for sure, this is a quick summary point of the last 20 lines. When we measure our damages, we measure in the following way. What was its original value before I killed it? What is the animal's value after I killed it? Subtract B from A. And C is your answer. If it's $1,000 cow, and now that it's dead for all of its parts, it's going to be $500. So then I owe you $500. Let's give another practical case. You take my MacBook Pro and you drop it on the floor and it no longer works. Physically, all the pieces are intact, but it doesn't work. So I can sell that for parts and get some reasonably good money. So if you're the damager, if you're the mazik, you'll say, Phil, I damaged your $1,000 computer. But I know that you can sell a dead computer on eBay for $600. I only owe you $400. That's taka true. They are not obligated to replace the product in full. They're only obligated to pay the pchas. They're only obligated to pay the subtracted amount of money from that which it was worth to that which it is now worth. 5 lines from the bottom, the Gemara says, Amar le Rav Kahana le Rav. This can't be right. L'Rava. Rav Kahana was a 3rd century Amora. He probably never met Rav, because Rav was a super early Amora who overlapped with Rebbe. What's that? Huh? You can have Rav Kahana says in the name of Rav, that you can have, but you can't have the two of them talking to each other. So here the language, very good. Here the language is Amar le Rav Kahana le Rav. And the Hagos Vitzionim on the side here corrects it and says L'Rava. That makes a lot more sense. It doesn't even make total sense because Rava was 4th century, but they overlapped apparently. But you're right, that's correct. That sometimes Amar Rav Kahana, Amar Rav, that's acceptable. But in a direct dialogue, my presumption is from historical sources is that they never met one another, even though, of course, Rav is still famous. So I'm sure he was famous right after he died. So the Gemara says that Rav Kahana was speaking, now we see it's to Rava. The only reason we thought that in that third answer that the money goes to the nizak, that the corpse goes to the nizak, the carcass, is because the pasuk says v'amesi elo halav hachi. But I might have assumed without that pasuk, what might I have assumed? Hava amina nevela demazik havya. I might have thought that without the pasuk of v'amesi elo, that perhaps, that maybe I would have thought without a mari makom, that maybe I would have thought that the carcass goes to the mazik instead. Says the Gemara, that can't be, because hashta iisle v'didei kama trefos. Let's say that a mazik keeps dead animals in his fridge. Have you ever been to those, those movies where like they're boxing and they punch carcasses hanging from hooks in a large freezer? So this guy, let's say the mazik owned one of those places and then he accidentally killed your animal. Oh, you need a carcass? No problem. I got a carcass, no problem. So that's what the Gemara is talking about. So Yoivle, he would have just given it to him. To Amar Mar, Yashiv, that when we pay someone back, this is a pasuk, Bal Habori Shalem Kesef Yashiv Liv Allah. And we learned earlier the Rabos Shvei Kesef Afilu Suben Didei Mibaya. You're going to tell me that it goes to the nizak? You're going to, without that, of course, what are you talking about? The guy owns carcasses. He has that freezer in the back of an Italian restaurant, like every movie that we've ever seen. So says the Gemara, therefore, it's true, by the way. No, it's usually Italian. My Bekias in movies is much better than my Bekias in Shas. That's recorded for posterity.
For the rest of the rest of time.
We all have chesronos, that's mine. It's among my many, I should say. I have a whole bunch, but that's the one I'm willing to share on video today. So confessions. Confessions by a rabbi. Yeah. So says the Gemara that Didei Mibaya doesn't even make sense to make such a diuk, because obviously it can't be that it would go to him, because he could always just pay with subin. So what's the point of giving him the carcass? He could always give it right back. So therefore the Gemara says, Lo tzricha ela lepchas nevela. All we're talking about, says the Gemara, is pchas nevela. We are obviously only talking about the difference between the original cost of the shore before it was killed, minus the current value of the animal now that it's been killed, and the money that's left over underneath the equals line is the amount of money you have to pay. So says the Gemara on the bottom of Yudam and Beis, Lema, perhaps we should say Pchas Nevela Tanai. Maybe there's a machlokes tanaim about whether or not we're obligated to pay Pchas Nevela. What would the machlokes be? The Tanya, the Brisa writes, Im tarof yitaref yivi ehu eid, yavi eidin shenitrafa be'ones upater. We should bring edim that the animal was nitrafa by itself, and it would therefore be pater. So therefore, that would be one side. And Abba Shaul Omer yavi iduda lebezdin, and iduda is actually the nevela itself. That's what Rashi says 3 lines down. I've never seen the word iduda before. I don't know what its etymology is, but Rashi says that an iduda is the actual nevela itself. So what do we see from over here? That according to Abba Shaul, you have to give over the iduda, and according to the Tanakama, you're pater entirely. So therefore, it seems to be that there's a machlokes in regards to whether or not we're obligated to pay the bechas. Arura.
You never saw the word either.
Pirush shemesa below bracha beista garas idura. 3 versions of the same word. Our Gemara says iduda. Rashi doubles down. Tosfos says language. His basic language of the Gemara is arura, the cursed one. Pirush shemesa below bracha, from the word arur. The Istigarsi Tosfos says adura. Kamo achas mehena lo ne'edara. Correct. It's missing. Uvekuntras garis aduda kamo yochal. All right. I don't know enough Hebrew, but the Maisa, whatever the case may be, everyone agrees what it is, that it is the Nevela. I didn't see that Tosfos. Thank you for pointing it out. So here it's possible that we see that there's a machlokes about pichas nevela. Do we say that the subtraction that I've been sharing, the total cost minus the damage value equals what you owe? The Tanakama seems to say pater and Abba Shaul seems to say chayiv. My lab b'hakam miflagi the mar savar pichas nevela denizakav mar savar demazakav. Says Gemara, no, the kule alma denizak. Everyone agrees that the value that the animal itself, the dead carcass, actually goes to the nizak. V'hacha b'torech nevela kamiflagi. We're only talking about who has to be machriach to schlep the nevela. Cows are big, sheep are small, but cows are big. Who is obligated to move them? Remember that in our Mishnah we talk about a shiur all the time. Those animals are like a good couple thousand pounds. I don't know how much a cow weighs. 2,000 pounds. That's not small. Last I checked. So says the Gemara V'atanya. After all, what is the brisa, right? Acherim omrim. Minayin shal bal habor lahalos shor miboro, that the owner of the boar is the one who's obligated to take the boar out. Talmud kesef yashiv ve'alav ve'hames. Look at this language. We don't even read it in trup this way. The way we read it is kesef yashiv le'alav alav kama ve'hames yelo. But the pasuk places the comma elsewhere in regards to how to analyze the pasuk for halachic purposes. Kesev yashiv elav v'hames. What does that mean? That he has to give money, and he also has to be the one to take out the mace. Amar le'abai le'rava. Hai torach nevela hechidami. What is the case where one is obligated to move the nevela? Ilema dibabira deshavya zuza. If you want to say that the value of the animal when it's at the bottom of the pit is one zuz, the aguda, and if the animal were to be on the lip of the pit, it's shavya arba, because you have to work much harder to get the animal out from the bottom of the pit. Got to pull a lot harder. Remember, pits that kill are 10 deep, so they're 40 inches deep. 2,000-pound cow, like, you're better off like making a barbecue. You're not getting that cow out of there without 10 people. It's a massive amount of effort. So the value of the animal when it's at the bottom of the pit is less than the value of the animal at the edge of the pit. So kitarach b'denafshe tarach, he has to do it himself. So if the Gemara says if that's what it means, so then if he's doing the work, it's only for one zuz. It means he's going to be the one to do it, the owner of the pit. Amar le lo tzricha de bebira shavya zuza ve'aguda nami shavya zuza. They're the same value. The animal at the bottom of the pit and on the lip of the pit are worth the same thing. Third of the way down on Yud Aleph Amid Aleph. Is there such a case like that? Says the Gemara, yes, there is. In Ta'amri Inchi, Kishora b'mata bezuza, Kishora b'dabra bezuza. When there's a boar in the city, it's worth a zuz. And when there's a boar out in the desert, it's also worth a zuz. So the Gemara basically says that you tried to say that there's a machlokes about pichas nevela between the Tanakama and Abba Shaul, Kamash Malan, that's not what they're talking about. That's about something else. And let's summarize again. Pichas nevela is now doubled down again. We tried to say that there's a Tanakama who disagrees. As of now, it seems that nobody disagrees with our math equation. If I damage something of yours, we look at its original value, we subtract from it its current value, and the dollar sign that comes up on your calculator is what you owe. I wonder how it works in secular law. How does that work? If I partially damage your computer, am I obligated to replace your computer in American law?
Insurance, you got two different things. You got actual cash value on replacement. Two different things.
Insurance is not.
No, insurance is not the same thing.
I mean, you're paying a premium
Right.
based on what you want.
Right, but they'll only, they're right, that they do the same thing. They pay to fix it. They don't necessarily pay to get you a new car.
That's
unless
true.
It'll be cheaper.
That's true.
Than fixing that.
That's true. That's not a legal response,
No.
but it is true about the insurance companies. Yeah, I have no idea. What happened to Michael Schechter? We needed him today. Where'd that guy go? It's exactly right. Got to bring him back. Larry Chambers would know too. All right, the Gemara says a third of the way down, moving on just a little bit. Amar Shmuel, Ein Shamin, Lo Laganev, Velo Lagazlan, Elo Lenizakin. We don't make any of these, small distinctions of Pchas Nevela. We don't do any of that for a Ganev or for a Gazlan. We only do it in regards to damages. So if I steal something of yours, it's full replacement, right?
Even if you return it.
Huh? That's a mitzvah d'oraisa to return it. And then if you return it, you don't have to pay back the value because
You just have to pay like that little nas, 25%, right?
you're talking about Ve'eshiv esagzel asher gazal. Ve'eshiv esagzel is not a knas. Ve'eshiv esagzel asher gazal is a mitzvah d'oraisa. So I don't know that the regular rules of knas apply. I don't know. You could be right. Told you where my Bekias lies. It's not here. The Gemara says on this that there's a kasha. What? I'm very good. I know full movie lyrics by heart. I'm very good. This is another reason why on-the-Daf doesn't want me on their platform. We don't understand what. Sorry, I skipped a line. Va'ani omer. Shmuel says af l'shoel. The same rules apply by shoel. Now, when he said this line, we don't know if he was comparing them to Ganev or if he was comparing them to Nisakin. We don't know. It's kind of dangling in the air. So that's what the Gemara says, the Abba Modali, Abba, my master, which is how Shmuel referred to Rav, which is a real term of endearment. They were equals, but at the same time, he obviously knows that Rav was a Talmud Muvhak of Rebbe. So the Gemara says that we don't that Shmuel adds in Shoel. We just don't know what he meant. So the Gemara asks, when we say Af l'Shoel, do we say Shaman, that we in fact are going to be Shaman like we would by Nizakin? Lost my place here. Shaman va'aba modali, and Rav agrees with me. Odil mahachi ka'amar. Perhaps it's va'ani omer af l'shoel ein shaman, like the case of Ganav and Gazlan va'aba modali. So we don't know Shmuel Shita or Rav's because Shmuel spoke up for himself and included Rav. We just don't know if when he said Shoel that af shoel, does that mean Shoel is like the Ganav and Gazlan where it's just replaced entirely, or no, is it like Nizakin where we do our subtraction and only give the current value? So the Gemara says to this, Toshma, let's try and give an answer. Tahu Gavra, the Sha'il Narga Mechabre. There was a man who borrowed an axe from his friend. Tavra, I borrowed your axe and I broke it. Asa Lakame de Rav, and they went to Bezdin and they didn't know how to answer the question. And Phil borrowed Tex's axe and Phil broke it. Amarle Zil Shlim Le Narga Ma'alia, go pay for a new axe. So says the Gemara, Shma Mina, Ein Shamin. What we see from over here is we don't make cheshbonos. It's just replacement. That's all that it is. You ruin the axe. Go to the store and buy him an axe. Even though the current axe that you broke is not new. You have to replace it with a full axe. So what do we see from here? We see that Shmuel and therefore Rav, must hold that when we say af l'shoel, this was a case of borrowing. I borrowed your axe. What do we see? I have to pay in full for that. That means ein shaman. It's in the category, shoel is in the category of Ganav and Gazlan. So says the Gemara, no, Adirabba, that's not correct. And this part of the Gemara we didn't see yet. It wasn't referenced earlier. And that is, Mida Amre Le Rav Kahana Ravasi, the Rav Kahana Ravasi pushed back on Rav and said, Dina Hachi? Okay, you want to talk and learning, no problem. But that's really how we paskin. And Rav was silent, vishasik. So what do we see from here? From Rav's silence, we see, no, there are shita. I'm just going to put words in Rav's mouth. No, there are shitas like that. I was just letting them know that the Mordechai in the back holds that way. But Lamaisa, we don't paskin that way. And v'shasik shmami no shaman, that a shoel is not like a Ganav and a Gazlan. A shoel is like Nezikin. And therefore, just like by Nezikin, we do original value minus current value equals burden on the mazik. We would say the same thing by a case of shoel. And if I ruin Texas, if I ruined your axe, we would look at the value of it today. What is it worth right now? Go on eBay and sell the parts. What is it worth? And that is what you would have in your hands, and I would have to pay the balance.
Make a difference if the thing is no longer usable.
Well,
like that
it has a value.
Piece of metal who wants and needs it?
Arguably, it could be melted down. Everything has a value. Whatever. In that case, it would have value. The wood has value because someone doesn't have to go to the store to buy that to burn it. Maybe it's 5 cents, maybe it's 10 cents, but there's still value. So there are theoretical scenarios where your damage is so severe, and we'll discuss that in the Bavas as well, where you completely obliterate it, and therefore your original value is 100, your current value is 0, and therefore you owe 100. But the formula is still the same, which is subtraction. Original value, current value, your burden, the mazik's burden. So you could say the $100 is now worth a penny. Not that I have no use for it, but it's not worth anything. It's not my own perceptions. Got in a car accident a couple of years ago. I sideswiped a car. I totaled the car I was driving, and I totaled the car. The parts of the car could have been sold for thousands of dollars. but they billed my Chase credit card insurance. Thank God for that, by the way. Didn't even hit my regular insurance. They bought him a new car. Why would they do that? Okay, so that's not my problem. But it's crazy town. There's some of the tires were in good shape. Some of the doors are in good shape.
That's certainly also used.
What?
Insurance company kept that.
Oh, I'm sure. I have no doubt. They sell it off for people who are going to strip it, and you're going to use it for parts. So that's what the Gemara is saying over here, is that as long as there's a value of any kind, to answer your question, we do the regular subtraction of original cost minus this current value equals the responsibility of the mazik. The Gemara says, how do we paskin in this case? Itmar 2/3 of the way down. Amar Ula, Amar Rebbe Lazar, Shaman leganev vilagazlan. Rav Papi Amar ein shaman. Hilchasa ein shaman lo leganev lo legazlan. So machlokas about the ganev and the gazlan. Aval shoel shaman, but by a shoel we are shaman, which is against how we just learned our story about Rav. Kid Rav Kahana v'Ravasi. Amar Ula, Amar Rebbe Lazar. This is let me just give some framing here. We saw a shita of Ula in the name of Rebbe Lazar, which was this line of Shaman Legana with the Gazlan. The Gemara is now going to give us 6 cases of Ula in the name of Rebbe Lazar. None of them have to do with our sugya. So we see this sometimes in Shas, that to make things a little bit easier to remember, we had one statement of Ula in the name of Rebbe Lazar. Now we're going to have 6 more out of left field from another strata, totally unrelated. But it does make the next Amud very quick and very easy, which is at least a silver lining. 8 lines from the bottom, 9 lines from the bottom. Amar Ula, Amar Rebbe Lazar, Shilya shiyatzitza mixasa. Let's say that a placenta partially leaves the body b'yom rishon, and therefore that's the day of Leda. Umiktsasa b'yom sheni, and part of the placenta left a woman's body on day 2. So how do we count in regards to days of Tuma? Because we know that from the day that a woman gives birth, that's day 1 of her count of days of Tuma. So says the Gemara, Monin la min harishon. We count day 1 where part of the placenta exited the body, and then on day 2 more exited the body. So on day 1, that's when we start counting her tuma. Amalei Rabba, my daitach l'chumra. You're trying to be so stark and so frum. You're trying to say that day 1 where there was some type of showing of the placenta, that's the day when we start our tuma. That means that she'll end her tuma a day earlier. That's a chumra de asili de kulahu de kamet taheres lami rishon. Her counting will start from day 1 and she'll end on day 14, when really maybe her day 14 is on the next day. So it's a chumra de asili de kula. Says the Gemara, you're correct. 5 lines from the bottom. Ela amar Rava lachush choshes mimna lo mimnia ela lesheni. You're right. We're going to be very concerned about this, and really she can't start her count until the next day, and therefore she's going to be tmeya for 15 days, not 14 days. My kamashmalan. What does this come to teach us? The ein mixas shilya below vlad. This comes to teach us that there is no partial showing of a placenta without there being a part of a vlad, part of the fetus actually showing as well. And therefore, we presume that on day 1, there must have been some showing of a human body, of the fetus, inside the showing of the placenta. The Gemara says, but why would you need to teach me that? That's an idea we've learned already in Shas. We learned this in... where did we learn this? Because it says over here it's in Chul, and I remember learning it, no? David? Memory? Anybody? No. Okay. So it says the Gemara, we learned this already. Tanina, Shilya shiyatzitza miktsasa asura be'achila. If you have an animal, we're talking about now about animals and not people. Yeah. Let's say that you have a cow, and the cow partially births a calf, meaning it was yatzitza miktsasa. So then the halacha is asura be'achila. Why is this animal asura be'achila? We know that if a mother cow is shechted and a baby cow is intact, the baby cow doesn't require shechita. That animal is called a ben pakua. As I've shared with you before, we've learned this in Shas before. Ben Pakua Burgers is the store that my friends wanted to open, because you can create a scenario where cows never need shechita ever again. It's fascinating. Because you could take a ben pakua, you shech the mother in the last month of gestation and extract that baby and mate it with another opposite gendered cow that's in the same boat, where the mother was shechted right before the baby was born, and those two grow up and mate, no more shechita. Because that's where Ben Pakua Burgers comes in. It's actually part of the same pizza chain as it's Rocket Barbecue. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. So over here, in this case, the Gemara says, I don't need you to teach me that ein mixas shilya below vlad. I already know this from the world of animals. Why is this animal aser be'achila without shchita? Because the animal is already mixas yatasa. So you can't say that it's not shaykh to shchita. It's not a ben pakua. It's a regular animal. And simin vlad be'isha, simin vlad be'behema. But we have an equivalency between a woman delivering a child and an animal delivering its child, which is that when there's miktsas, then we know that the animal is considered to be a born animal, and therefore by a woman tuma starts, and by an animal shchita is now required. And on the very last line of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, the Gemara says imi masnisa, and it's a great question, but we need both mari makomos, because if we only had our Mishnah Havamina, turning to the top of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, going to the last word on the page, Havamina de yesh mixas shilya below vlad. Maybe mita oraisa. We would say that there's mixas shilya below vlad in our case by a woman, where part of the placenta showed. Bigzera mixasa atukulan, and there was only rabbinic in nature. Kamash malan, that it's a din de oraisa just like by animals. That was comment number 2 of Ula bar Rebbe Lazar. Here's number 3. Well, the first one was our sugya. The second one was mixas shilya below vlad. Here's the next one. Yud Aleph Amud Beis, second line. V'amar Ula Amar Rebbe Lazar bechor shenitraf besoch lamed yom. Rachmana litzlan. If there's a bechor, an oldest. Rashi over here points out 9 lines down. Bechor shenitraf bechor adam. Rachmana litzlan shenerag besoch lamed yom. If there's an oldest child who's killed within 30 days, ein podinoso. There's no longer a mitzvah pidyon haben if that baby was killed. Because of the double language, perhaps I would have thought that one's obligated to do a pidyon even after the baby dies. The word ach teaches us that we distinguish between a baby that's alive and a baby that's no longer alive. And that's another example of a comment from Ula bar in the name of Rebbe Lazar. Here's the next one, 6 lines down. Va'amar Ula Amar Rebbe Lazar behema gasa niknes b'mashicha. A behema gasa that is going to be only acquired b'mashicha. Ay v'ha'anan tnan b'masira. We see over here that that's only true from another Mishnah, that it's given over only b'masira. Says the Gemara, that shita is hu da'amar ki haytana. That's only like the following shita, detanya. V'chachamim omrim zo v'zo b'mashicha. The Tanakama holds that really Mashicha is the way to be Kone a cow. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer Zov Zov Hagba. You have to pick it up. How do you pick up a cow? Not for now. We learned about this in Maseches Kiddushin. Says the Gemara. Next statement by Ula in the name of Rebbe Lazar. Amar Ula Amar Rebbe Lazar, quarter of the way down. When brothers are splitting up that which they're getting in Yerusha, they have to factor in the cost of the clothes that are on their back. You can't just make a cheshbon about what's in the garage. You also have to include the clothes that you're wearing. But the clothes that their children are wearing don't enter the cheshbon. So let's create a scenario. $10,000 worth of Yerusha and furniture. In the clothes that I'm wearing as an adult, $250. And in the clothes that my kids are wearing, $450. So the $250 gets factored in and divided among the brothers, but the $450 of my kids does not. Amar Papa Pamim, sometimes sometimes it's the case that even that which the person is wearing is not included in the cheshbonos of divvying up the Yerusha. Mishkachas la begadol achi, with the oldest brother. They want the oldest brother to be well dressed. He has to go to court. He has to go to Beis Din. He should look nice. And the other brothers are not makbid. Next case, 2 more. The next case of Ula in the name of Rebbe Lazar. We're about halfway down on Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Amar Ula Amar Rebbe Lazar. Shomer shemasar l'shomer pater. This is an old sugya. We saw this one somewhere. Maybe not. I can't remember anymore. Shomer shemasar l'shomer. Let's say I'm watching your item, and without your permission, I give it to another person to become the shomer. So says the Gemara that you're pater. I am pater because I gave it to you. We'll discuss why momentarily. The lomi baya, I don't need you to tell me that a shomer shemasa l'shomer is pater in a case of a shomer chinam shemasa l'shomer sachar. If I'm a shomer chinam watching your item and I give it to someone who I pay, who has a higher level of responsibility, there I gave it to someone who has a higher level of shmira. So pashut, I shouldn't have to worry too much about that. Ela afilu shomer sachar shemaser the shomer chinam, even if it's the reverse. Even if I'm a shomer sachar, I'm a higher level of responsibility, and I'm watching your item, and then I give it to a shomer chinam and say, I'm not going to pay you. Person number 3, you watch this item. Even there, tahashta gerue gare lishmiraso nami pater. Even so, you're still going to be putter. Why would it work if I'm lowering you paid me to watch your item. I gave it to someone to watch for no money. So if it's gerue gari l'shmira, so why would I not be held accountable? I was irresponsible. I gave away your item. The Gemara explains, shaharei masar leben das, because I gave it to a regular human being who's a responsible person. The money doesn't make him a mazik. If I don't pay him, it doesn't make a shomer chinam into a mazik. He's a regular guy. Rava disagrees 2/3 of the way down. Rava Amar, Shomer Shemasar the Shomer Chayev, that really it's the opposite. A Shomer Shemasar the Shomer, if I take your item and I give it over to someone else, I am liable for anything that happens to that item. And says the Gemara here too, Velomi Baya, I don't need you to tell me that you're going to be Chayev, that I'd be chayav for having someone else watch your item in a case of a shomer sachar, shemasar, the shomer chinam. Pasha, that's true, says Rabba. When I give it to someone who's going to watch less of it, de grue gar l'shmiraso, for sure that person's going to be chayav. Ela, the chiddush of Rabba is that afilu shomer chinam shemasar the shomer sachar chayav to amar le at mehemnes li b'shvua. What are you talking about? You can't give my item to somebody else. What are you doing? I asked you to watch my item. I don't care if you give it to the president of the United States. I don't care if you give it to a vault in a bank. You have no right to give my item to anybody else. You're held accountable. So says the Gemara, "Hi, lo mehemen li b'shvua." I made you give me a promise, but I don't know the other guy. No ne'eman. So machlokes Abai and Rabba. What?
But if he gives it to a student,
Why would that be an improvement?
because it says in Promise that if you give it to, Rabbi says if you give it to a student, you're not fired. First, I'm wanting to hire, because numbers get student. You're still trusting.
Is the shvua of the Talmud the same as the shvua of the Rebbe? Meaning what Rava is saying over here, great question. What Rava is saying over here is that it's not fair if I, as your shomer, let's say you're the owner, you say, Rabbi Karesh, I want you to watch something for me. I say, no problem. I'm watching it and then I give it to somebody else. Rava says you're chayiv. And why does Rava say you're chayiv? Because you, Rabbi Sandberg, only made a shvua with me. I promised you I'd take care of it. But if I gave it to David Merzel, so David, you and David don't have a shvua. So I don't know how to answer your question. But if the pressing point of the Gemara is a shvua, so then if the shvua of me transfers over to my Talmud, so then yes, it should work and be patur. That's true. But if the shvua is different, so then it would not work. I don't know if I'm right, but from the Gemara, it seems that way. Last little sugya of Ula Amar Rebbe Lazar, and then we're going to stop. Says the Gemara of Amar Ula Amar Rebbe Lazar. Hilcha, so the halacha is govin min ha'avadim. If you owe me something, I'm allowed to collect from your eved. Amar le Rav Nachman le'ula Amar Rebbe Lazar afidu miyasme. What about collecting from Yisomim? Lo, says the Gemara, that's not correct. Minei, only from him, namely only from avadim. Says the Gemara, Minei, if that's true that I can collect from this guy, afilu miglima de al kasvoi, so it should obviously be the case if I can collect from avadim, because if I'm allowed to collect Minei from the owner himself, I can even take the coat off of his back. If you owe me money and you're shirking your responsibilities, and I really like your Brooks Brothers jacket, I'm just going to take it, and it's mine, and that's totally allowed. So for sure, it would be true by an eved. And says the Gemara, what are we dealing with over here? Shaso aputiki. The Gemara says where I specifically established my eved as someone who can be collected from. Rashi, 2 lines from the bottom, says aputiki. Dibura maskal aputiki. Apo tehekoi. Over here is what I'm talking about. It's a play on words, a notricon, as we know from Shas. What the Gemara means is that this eved can be collected from Baal Chov go vehimenu. And if you owe me money, I can collect from the eved. Says the Gemara, Shora aputiki umecharo. Let's say the shore was an aputiki. I made my shore, my $2,000 shore. I made my shore the thing that you can collect from, and then it was sold. Ein Baal Chov go vehimenu. If I sold the shore, let's say you owe me money and I go over to you to collect it, and you say, well, I did have a shore that was an aputiki, but I sold it, so then I cannot go get from that shore my taima, because isle kala, there's a difference between an eved where there is a kol and the less le kala, but by an animal there is no kol that I made it into an aputiki, and those are the differences. These are the 6 cases of ula in the name of Rebbe Lazar, we'll stop right here. Mirza Hashem, tomorrow night, for those who will be here, we will have Daf Yomi starting at the top of Yud Beis Amud Aleph at the first word. Wishing you all a beautiful night.